Hello everybody and welcome to the end of another book. I would definitely recommend this book and books like it. If you want a better look at this is Eclipse by Wilder. She has another book called Golden that I also would recommend. Just because if you've grown up in a community where people sort of value reading, it gets to a point where it becomes competitive just like everything else, and everybody, wants to tell the best story, and things become very wordy and very heavy and just too much of the same story becoming repetitive. And it's that idea that people actually don't believe what they read. They don't believe what they say. And it's funny how a book like this can totally feel like a breath of fresh air. I mean, it's pages like this that almost just feel like such a pleasure to read. You come across and you're reading something that just sounds like fluid. It's like somebody sewing, and the whole thing just creates a picture with every line that is strewn across these pages. It is very simple and very elegant in how it's worded and presented, just with these sort of reflective images, almost like cutouts and negatives that are within the pages. And I think that it can sort of speak to the idea of peace. Everybody's so caught up in ideas of protagonists, antagonists, climaxes, and popularity. But I think that there's some disconnect with this idea of what it means to be yourself. Are there moments that we actually can control the peace of our world? Is there some ability that we all have to invoke a sense of things being simple-natured or single-minded? I like this passage that they wrote just because she wrote it in a way that I've never heard anybody express before, even though it's a common thing to, reverse basically a cliche idea, right, into the part that most people would look at while saying that the other part is actually what you're really looking for. But it's still something to say this in a new way. And that's what I value about this book, is that maybe it's a lot of cliche sort of things, right? But the author at least uses originality to say a lot of these sort of phrases and commonalities in unique ways. I'm terrible at playing games, but I have mastered the art of hide and seek. No matter how many seconds pass us by, I always find myself behind you twice in a day. Just when I start to wonder if it's too much, I hear you say, Isn't it beautiful that I get to be the last thing you touched before every hello and after every goodbye? It was then I realized I have never really wanted to hide. I've just wanted to know I was found, a rising and setting sun. And it is like that moment of this peace and that sense of control that I was speaking about yesterday, where maybe the entire time we were looking for something, when we were playing hide and seek, we're looking for agreeance. But our approach to that pathway, I think, really can affect what we see when we get on that path. Sort of like how it is that we proceed on the trail. And this whole idea of, are we doing something to prove it? Or are we doing something more naturally? So maybe the best place to find yourself is to sort of hide out in the open. It's to be a character that, even in times where you're not playing a game, you still say the same things. You still act in the same way. And then maybe it's not just coincidence that things actually line up sometimes, that you find yourself in a book, in a place. It's actually you. And so that whole sort of saying where, you know, you can create this peace in your world is coming true. And you can sort of reduce that all the way down to the idea of the first thing that ever was. And the idea, if you're given all chances, then maybe you'd find it without playing. That even in that moment of where it seems like you have no choice, again, we've reverted ourselves back to the whole idea of everything that ever happened coming from a singular point. Maybe you can say you've always been the same. So you weren't just given the chance. It's not necessarily just happenstance. And then this place can become a place that you can continually go back to. So then maybe when you come across the competition that life definitely tries to promote, you can always say that you remember that one idea that everything came from. And maybe it was the idea that you're not playing. Which sort of invokes the spirit of the thing at the same time as saying that you always have a choice, a decision in making. After all, life is just politics. And maybe the politics of semantics. As to what people call things and why. Even the most scientific of names comes from a thing looking out for itself, and even the most harshest feelings change and become just a feeling. So then maybe when you're not playing, it's words like these that seem to be the most effective. Even though they seem like playful words. Like I've said before, it's funny how being honest can essentially mean just being you. There was a feeling there that I couldn't quite pin down. And I tried to make it sort of collapse by trying to figure out exactly what the general idea of this feeling was. And I sort of rendered it into this. Is this all an accident when it feels right? Like it is out of your control, the ability to turn the power off, invoking power itself. But does turning the power off for the wrong reason feel wrong? Like we weren't the ones who were at peace, like we weren't ready yet? I always recently liked to say that life is unpredictable, but at what point? One thing is for certain always, even if other things are not certain at certain other points. But at one point was the only thing that was certain, the only thing that mattered, making everything at that point certain, but only with uncertainties after. For example, at one point is life itself certain, but is it the only thing that matters? And after that point, there are uncertainties, but the fact that life is a certainty is still there. So then if the power turning off at some point is an uncertainty, we can still always say with certainty that there is power. It is just the kind of power that changes. Just as if there is always life with uncertainty, it is just the kind of life that changes. It is this uncertainty that bothers me though, almost that by its nature of giving chance, it takes it away. With chance, I am not guaranteed, but if I take away chance in favor of choice, what else is there to create value of experience? I can almost see chance and choice being the same thing. But if I could have always chosen something, do I not feel lame when I come to a place by what seems to be chance? What then invokes the spirit that by anything we come in contact with, we speak and act to create chance there, that the place is there without us, never knowing if the chances we give actually cause something to better our choices on contact. I can see chance as a choice better now, that if we had to choose something that would be considered chance, it is like standing for something. It seems that the greater that chance is invoked, the more it becomes a solitary experience, which does not negate our choosing it, but does make it a choice. Then if you look at the possibility of all the experiences you could have, chance is always there. What then gives you a choice? And I sort of felt that exact thought when I was feeling and thinking and speaking at the same time, right? About this experience and about how sort of humble this book is. And maybe I thought, why couldn't life be like this all the time? And I tried to invoke power and choice to sort of dispel the idea that this was all by chance. However, I sort of then lost something when I set out to accomplish that. And it was sort of that humility, that humble nature of the whole thing, I think. That idea that with less, it was almost like there's never really any less. It's just you can see some things and then other things overlaid on it or behind it. It was like, maybe I'm saying less, but I can see more. And it's this fine balance of these intricacies that I think give this experience. And maybe there is no such thing as being completely humble, but maybe all that really means is that you allow there to be a variety, a diversity of things in your life. And I can sort of say that humbly now because my attitude has changed in a way that says that that's a choice, whether or not you believe it or it's true. But I've sort of approached it in a way that has used all of these things to sort of say something. But again, saying something isn't just with listening or hearing, it's with feeling, and it's with the ideas of pressures and changes and differing types of things that you've somehow seemingly put together to show that life goes on. Maybe it changes. Maybe it's not what we expected. But then in that way, we can say less is more. It's not necessarily that we're saying everything is less. Maybe just less of some certain type of thing, which gives us an allowance of more of other things. And maybe that's me saying something that I feel like nobody's ever said. How many times can this be done? At least I've never heard anybody say that. But I've never heard anybody say in that precise way of always looking to be found when playing hide and seek. And maybe for some moments I just actually really felt exhausted. But then maybe all exhaustion is, in this context, would just be changes. I really feel like I'm changing. And so maybe I could have been saying something that certain parts of me don't understand at this time. But then again, maybe it was meant to be experienced. Maybe one day I'll understand. But see, I can believe in it because maybe it really is just true to say how small you really are. Is today as good as yesterday? Is it as good as the day before it? Will I be able to quench or quell any of these types of experiences in the future with what I said now? Or could what I said yesterday apply to today? Am I just feeling like my book is over? Is that what I'm feeling? Where will I go now? What will I do? Was last week as good as it gets? But I was certain that I thought that about the week before last. Maybe this is how everything goes. Maybe really everything knows, but it's just the way it speaks changes. And so what you would consider being a telling sign of that fact is only held in experience. Which there would be no way of knowing if it was chance or choice again. The more that it was either. Which sort of equates the two. Do one of these at this moment. Don't know if I've ever done that pose before. Maybe in, funny enough, times where I feel uncertain about something. But sort of at this moment, I feel like I've equated that with certainty. So that whole motion sort of just changed for me. And if by me choosing to be here to be able to say all this stuff really doesn't ever reach anyone's ears, do I really believe it?